that we have a million questions. And I'm a native Clevelander.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Teresa. I was watching Mark Joseph. I love your hair, by the way. I was watching Mark Joseph on City Club stream. He was doing a love letter to an anti-racist Cleveland.
And wait, and what is this on?
City Club. It was a stream. He was downtown at Public Square, but you could stream it live from 12 to 1. So I checked in at 5 just to kind of, be here for people who wanted to get in. And then was literally listening to this conversation that he was having with, the head of the City Club. I can see him, blanking on his name at the minute, but Dan Moulthrop.
Oh, okay. So it's a City Club event?
Yeah, yeah, sitting at Public Square, but you could stream it if you couldn't go down to Public Square, which was kind of nice.
I just saw Mark Joseph the other day,
Really?
Saturday. Yeah.
Funny. Yeah. Hey, Jason Powers, who's going to do the first presentation. I thought about changing the order, but he's going to join us, but it's probably going to be around 12:15, 12:20. He had a conflict. 1:15, 1:20. He had a conflict at the front end. And I said, we'll do introductions. So you could join us after, by the time you get on, we'll probably still be finishing intros. I've gotten like almost everybody confirmed except Kyle, who wanted to send someone. But okay. Really everybody else, Fred Bidwell even, confirmed. Actually, it just dawned on me this is being recorded. So no diss to you, Fred.
Hey, Fred. And Linda, because I don't have the list of attendees, you may need to help me go across.
Oh, meaning for intros, just to.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to just name who you see on your screen?
I can do that and you'll let me know who I miss.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Actually.
And I actually also am going to put the agenda, although brief, in the chat, but I know if I do it now, anybody who joins after, right, doesn't get to see it. Isn't that how it works?
Right. So let's, since we have a full slate of folks attending, let's give folks a few minutes to join us.
Okay, and then I'll check off as we go through the as you go through your intro there, Teresa.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone.
And we have, just so you know, we have some interns with us this summer, 3 actually, Teresa, and we invited them all to join. So you'll get to hear them when they do
Great,
intro.
thank you. Hmm. Can I be heard? Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone's on mute. Or you just don't want to say good afternoon to me today? Which is it?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Thank
Afternoon,
you.
Teresa.
I feel better now. Good afternoon, and thanks for giving me a few moments to switch devices here. So, Linda,
Yes.
we have 19.
Yes, I mean, there's more people have confirmed, but they'll be often joining late. I did put the agenda in the chat. I do know that if somebody joins after, I'll have to repeat this, but just so you can get started, Teresa. There's some other people going to join and they'll probably dribble in over time. If you want to get started, here's the layout.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining. And we're just going to, and hopefully everyone's having a fabulous summer and enjoying the somewhat cooler weather today, and no rain thus far. So we're going to do our usual and go around so that everyone can introduce themselves, and we want you to give your name, affiliation, and this is really an easy one, something new or good in your life. So I will start. Teresa Metcalf Beasley, affiliation is I'm vice chair of CMP and chair of placemaking committee. And I'm a partner with McDonald Hopkins, and something really good is my youngest graduated from college. So I have 2 college grads. That's my something good. And I am going to go to the right of my screen and I will try to let you know who I'm calling on next. And Fred, you are next. That's just a heads up. And Chavius Burns, you are after that. And I'm sure I mispronounced your name and you'll correct me. So Fred, good afternoon.
Hi, everyone. My name's Fred Bidwell. I'm with Front International and Transformer Station, which are 2 arts organizations. And I'm on the board of CNP. And my something good is I just started as board chair of a new organization I'm really excited about called Assembly for the Arts, which is arts advocacy in Cleveland.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
Chavius, followed by Dion.
All right. Hello, everyone. You were close. My name is Chavius Burns.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. I'm intern here at CMP under Andrew Sargent, helping work on the Rockefeller Park and Kingsbury Run projects. Something good that's happened in my life, I would say, has been this internship, just to have this opportunity, to learn from professionals and further develop myself.
Oh, that was a great answer. Miss Dion, followed by Divya.
Good afternoon. I'm Deanne Alexander. I'm the president of Village Capital, which is the lending arm of CNP. And the good thing is that I just found out that a couch that I ordered in January that was being built is finally being delivered. I don't remember what it looks like, but I'll be excited all over when I see it.
Congratulations. Is it Daya? And Ivan, you're after her. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No problem. Hi, my name is Divya Sridhar. I'm the manager of climate resiliency and sustainability here at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Something good, new and good. We have two new babies in our family, and I'm an aunt and I'm a great aunt both at the same time within a matter of a week's difference. And I'm excited to hold new babies again. One of them is in Cleveland.
Congratulations to you.
Yeah.
Ivan, followed by Anna.
Hey guys, good afternoon. My name is Ivan Vasquez, and like Chavius, I am the other intern under Andrew Sargent, working under the Rockefeller Park and Kingsbury Run projects. And similar to Chavius, I think this internship was definitely a blessing for us because normally we would have received internships up into our junior year that summer, but we were able to get it a year earlier. So that was really nice.
Cool, congrats. Anna, and then Philip.
Hi, my name is Anna, and I'm also an intern at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress under Divya Sridhar. I would say that I'm going to have to go with the theme and say this internship has been a blessing. It definitely really excited about Circular Cleveland and everything that I'm working on.
Cool. Thank you. Philip, and then Andrew.
Hi, Phil Sedmeyer here, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. I'm the real estate portfolio manager. Something new and good. I'll say what's good is my older brother and my niece and nephew, they're actually coming to visit. Haven't seen them in over a year. Pretty close to my nephew. He's 9 and my niece is 3. So, so seeing them this weekend is going to be really fun for me because again, I haven't seen them in like a year and a half. So pretty excited about that.
Cool. Very good. Enjoy the visit. Andrew, and then Mary Beth.
My name is Andrew Sargent, but I go by Drew. I am the current Rose Landscape Architectural Fellow with Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Something new and good that's happened with me. I recently had gnats in my houseplants, and my mother and my girlfriend has teamed up to destroy all the gnats. So I came back home and there are no more gnats everywhere. So I was really happy about that.
I totally understand that. Good job. Mary Beth, and then Tom.
Hi, I'm Mary Beth. I'm Director of Planning at RTA. Something good is that my daughter graduated from high school and will be heading off to RIT on August 17th. So that's my last one. I'm going to be an empty nester.
Congratulations. Tom, followed by Greg.
Hello, everybody. Tom Strinsky from Warehouse District and Gateway District in downtown. I recently had a day to myself and spent it on my bike exploring all the new bike infrastructure and the towpath and all that stuff, and had a really great time, kind of in a weird way, rediscovering Cleveland.
Oh, wonderful. Good job. Greg, and then Kelly.
Hi, Greg Peckham. I'm an intern with Andrew. Kidding. Greg Peckham with
Exactly.
Yeah, new and good. Just fresh back from vacation. Got to go to New York and to Massachusetts and see family that we haven't seen in well over a year. So that was great. And like Divya, found out that I have 2 new family members on the way with both of my cousins who are having kids. So a lot of time to see people I hadn't seen in a long time and learn that we're going to have new people in the family as well. Thank you.
Cool. Hi, Kelly, and then Kathleen.
Hi. Yeah, I'm excited to share. My youngest daughter just graduated from high school this spring as well, and she's headed to UVM in August. And I want to put in a plug for the Lake Erie Water Trail in Cuyahoga County. we achieved state designation, and we're having a little ceremony on Saturday. So that's kind of a cool thing to welcome everybody out to the lakefront.
Cool.
Where is it,
Congratulations to you.
Sorry for interrupting, but Kelly, where is it?
There, I can send you a brochure as a follow-up, but it's really a lot of existing access points and just communicating to people, how to link them together. We have, I think, there are 3 kind of sheltered rest areas, but then 9 different access points. The westernmost one is in Huntington Reservation, and the easternmost one is in Sims Park in Euclid. And we're hoping to then eventually link to the counties to our east and west as they bring their own water trails on.
And Kelly, who are you with? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm with Cleveland Metro Parks. Sorry.
Oh, cool.
that was
Kelly,
an important part.
Can you send that to Linda so she could circulate it to the group?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Kathleen, and
Hi,
followed by
everybody.
Terry.
Okay, I'm Kathleen Crother. I'm head of the Cleveland Restoration Society, our local historic preservation organization. Well, we just got home from a family vacation in Montana where we were for 2.5 weeks. 1 week was spent in Glacier National Park, which is just mind-blowing. So we're not campers. I don't know how to camp. I don't even hardly know how to hike. We had bear spray, but it was fantastic. I recommend everybody go. And I'm now doing some post reading about how we all think that the national park, well, Glacier in particular, was this just completely wilderness area, when in fact, a lot of the trails were made by the American Indians who lived and hunted and in those grounds. So get there before the glaciers melt.
Great. Thank you, Kathleen. Dion, did you want to say something?
I just want to acknowledge that Kathleen is celebrating 34 years as director at CRS, and she has done a wonderful job, and that's this week. So I just wanted to put that plug in.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Time, watch out, everybody. Time flies. Yeah.
Congratulations
Thanks,
to you, Kathleen. And Terry, followed by Justin.
I'm Terry Schwartz with Kent State's Cleveland Urban Design Collaborative. And the one thing that's kind of new and good around here is that Kent State is gradually phasing back staff into our offices. And so I have company for the first time in a long time. I'm not the lonely ghost in the office, and that feels really good.
Congrats. Welcome back. And Justin, followed by David.
Good afternoon, everybody. Justin Fleming. I'm the real estate director and general counsel here at CNP. Something new and good is we just finished finalizing a trip to Austin in October to go to the Formula One race down there, which has been a bucket list item for me. And get to see some of Maria's family who lives down there. Folks I've had a million sort of Zoom calls with, but starting to make some of those connections is also really exciting.
Cool. Have fun. David.
Hi, David Eversole, Economic Development Director for the City of Cleveland, and just enjoying the summer. My wife and I got back from Florida last month, so we got to go to Disney World with my daughter, who's 5, and my new baby boy, who's now almost 4 months old. So we were able to get out of here and travel for a little bit, which we love to do. So that was really nice.
Oh. And Dorothy, good afternoon. Followed by Chris.
Sorry to be a little late, but actually, I'm Dorothy Bonnick. I'm CEO of Digital C, and the reason I was late is because it's the most exciting thing that ever happened to me. I'm about to announce the largest grant I've ever received and for an organization in a lifetime. And that will enable us to connect the city of Cleveland to the internet if the public sector piece of the grants come through. So it's very, very exciting moment.
And when is the official announcement, Dorothy? And congratulations.
July 28th will be the announcement. And Yeah, it's coming. So internet is coming to the full city of Cleveland. We've got 6 neighborhoods now, over 1,000 customers, and we're no longer going to be the least connected city in the country.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. And Chris, and hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, because I think you mean me.
I have KHRYS.
Yeah, yes, that's Chris. I'm Chris Shepton. I'm the Director of Real Estate Development for Famicos Foundation. What's new and good? I just came back. Today's my first day back in the office from vacation. I was in Kelly's Island for 3 days, like living it up and having a good time. So I highly recommend time away sitting next to water. Is very helpful and peaceful for the soul.
Excellent. Thank you. Bradford, good afternoon, followed by Nick.
Hey everyone, sorry I'm a couple minutes late. Bradford Davey with the Fund for Our Economic Future. I think the prompt was what's new and good. I'm going to take Chris's advice. I'm going to Charlotte this weekend with some college friends, a much needed guys trip. So I'm excited to spend some time, enjoying the weather.
Cool, enjoy. Nick, and then Karis.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Senior Manager of Marketing Design at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Something new and good for me is kind of with this vacation theme. On Friday, I'm leaving to go to Chicago to visit a good friend of mine. So I'm excited to I haven't seen him since before COVID. So it's one of my best friends. I'm excited to feel normal again for a little bit. So.
Oh, good. Very nice. Enjoy. Karis, and then Jennifer.
Hey everyone, Kara Singh with Midtown Cleveland. I'm the Director of Asia Talent Initiatives over here. Just following the trip trend, I just got back from like the Bay Area in California and was just, it was very good and very new. It was in town for a wedding. And so great to get to do that again. Saw lots of friends we hadn't seen in a long time, including their babies that were born during the pandemic. So amazing to see people that, have had kids and so many life changes over the past year and a half.
Cool. And thanks for sharing. And hello, Jennifer. Good afternoon.
Hey guys, sorry for the picture, but I am in the office and my big monitor does not have a camera on it. So you get to see my picture. My program director for creative culture and arts here at the George Gunn Foundation. I got a week and a half and then I'll be on a beach and I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh, wonderful. Good for you. And Monique. And if you're talking, you're on mute. There you go.
Trying to get my mouse to the thing. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Monique. I am CEO and founder of the Engagement Group, working to create community change through strategy and engagement consulting. I guess I'll break up the trend of going on vacation, but other than saying I'll be 40 years old and I'll be in Miami at the end of July, and I'm gearing up to that. But what's really new and good is I am only a month away from taking my son to college, which is a major emotional thing. Everybody I talk to, I tell them that, but I'm so proud of him. He's going to a HBCU in North Carolina, Bradford. And so that's what's new and good.
Well, congratulations. It is a milestone for those of us who have taken our kids and picked them up. So congrats.
Thank you.
Let's see. 2 things. Linda, I do not see Jason yet. So hopefully Drew will be able to start earlier and be first to present. And
yep,
you're shaking your head.
I'm shaking my head. Drew, you could go. You could step in because Jason's not here. Yes. Where's Drew? Where'd Drew go?
Yeah, he's on mute and not
He's
showing
on mute.
video. And just while hopefully Drew will join us. You do have the minutes from our last meeting. They were in the package. And then while we're waiting on Drew and or Jason, and Linda, I don't know if you could text you or someone.
Yeah,
We can
I'll
go,
do
we
that.
can go over the announcements and what we have coming up.
Yes. So, and I did not put it in the chat, but I will circulate it again after the meeting. Making myself a note here. But we are in the middle of a strategic planning process at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. Many of you, hopefully, obviously board members of CNP have been part of that. But also there was one of the, I think our May meeting was a focus group with the consultants. So the next step of that process in terms of community and stakeholder engagement is a series of town hall meetings that are going to be all on Zoom. And I want to say there's like one at 8 or 9 in the morning and another one at like 4 in the afternoon. They were at the bottom of the agenda. So sorry, 8:30 to 10.
We have 8:30 to 10.
Yeah,
and 4:30 to 6.
Yeah. So both of them are on July 27th. It's a Tuesday. And there's going to be some initial feedback on what was gathered by the consultants over this, the research and the period of time that they've been engaging people. So hopefully you can participate, because really we're trying to, well, I think, Teresa, you should do it as the co-chair of the strategic planning committee. You can explain even further why this is so important.
Well, how many of you actually participated in the meeting when we did do strategic planning as a place? So I see one hand, I see a few. Just what were your thoughts that you'd like to share with the group? And I think in doing all of that, you'll understand why this is important. So please, I think, Tom, you raised your hand. I'm not sure who else. I was going in between screens, but those who did participate in the strategic planning session, what were your takeaways?
I just always think it's good to reflect on what's happened recently and what's happening, and look toward the future with trends and what the current needs are. And I think it was, I was impressed with the facilitator. I honestly, I was surprised that E&Y had such a thing, so I was intrigued, but I thought it was a good conversation. So I'm excited to be a part of the continuing conversation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? No. And I see that, or any questions about it. I'm going through screens, so forgive me. And it looks like Jason did join. Hi, Jason. So actually we are through the beginning of our agenda if you are ready.
Yes, absolutely.
All righty. Linda, do you want to do any intros?
Well, only to say, only to say that I have seen Jason's work evolve over time. And he's done this presentation. I think I've seen it 5 times myself. And I learn something new every time he does it. He's very thoughtful. And if you have not participated in any session where you've seen information about the Middle Neighborhoods Initiative, really this is so appropriate for this advisory committee, because it's really talking about where in the spectrum of Cleveland neighborhoods do we look at how to support those that are literally in the middle. So with that intro, and then Jason did amazing work when he was at Old Brooklyn before going to the city to run this initiative. And anybody who might remember, he did a campaign called This Is Not Your Father's Neighborhood or something. Sorry, Jason, you're gonna have to remind us what the campaign was. And I did share the screen, so you should be able to take over the screen too. Great.
Thank you, Linda, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we had a couple of campaigns. The one that I think we got the most credit through CNP was the What's Your Old Brooklyn campaign, which really, what we did was we used some really flexible grant funding to really pushed the boundaries on what people thought the neighborhood was, because the brand and the concept and the idea of the place was really based on decades old perceptions. And the people that lived in the neighborhood really are the ones who make up sort of the definition of what Old Brooklyn as a neighborhood is. We'll actually talk a little bit about Old Brooklyn toward the later part of this presentation. But the What's Your Old Brooklyn campaign really was meant to create agency in the residents. You tell us what your experiences are, and it worked nicely because then the CDC could actually pivot to then create some of the types of events and activities that really reflected the neighborhood of 2017, not 1997, which was really the same playbook over and over. So that was a nice dovetail. So good afternoon, everyone. As Linda said, I've been giving this roadshow one way or another for the last year plus, and I've made adjustments as we go, and there's new things every time, but it always gets better when I get asked questions in the middle or people want clarifications. And really the tone of today, I've pushed a little bit more out at the end half on placemaking. And I just want to start by saying that the reason why the placemaking element is absolutely critical to Middle Neighborhoods work is because in a place like Northeast Ohio, we are working in a region where housing is plentiful, where families and households of choice can really choose dozens of places to call home. And Cleveland's neighborhoods are only a handful of those options. They attract in certain places in certain ways, but where Cleveland is really lacking and where my work really is creating next steps for the city is we don't have places that are not necessarily the obvious attractive if you have incomes locations, but those, we call them sort of the B team, neighborhoods that are either sort of changing, up and coming, provide opportunities for families to stay. I like what's here, or I want to be a part of what will be here. And that blend of things is what you get with old neighborhoods. But because Northeast Ohio provides quite a shopping cart of options, how do you make something stand out? How does Northeast Shores Collinwood stand out to Euclid when the housing stock is almost at half the price in some instances, and yet they're identical? Why is that happening? What are the gaps between places like Old Brooklyn and Parma when you could walk 2 streets in the 2 places and they look identical? But the Parma sort of narrative of maybe better schools, maybe better safety, whatever these realities or perceptions are, we're in a competitive market. And so placemaking is one of those wild cards that, if done properly and if done authentically, can really drive attraction and retention in neighborhoods in Cleveland. And so to begin, the endless question, what is a middle neighborhood? Well, you're looking at it. So here's a street in Bel Air Puritas. Here's another one in Old Brooklyn. Here's one over in West Park. And, the idea is that these places, they often don't really stand out. They're fairly attractive, they're stable, they're oftentimes filled with a higher senior population or a longer term resident. And in 2021, we really are hitting sort of the end of that last generation of stable homeowner. And we're seeing sort of the new trends of these neighborhoods tick up. Unfortunately, a lot of those trends are very alarming from an economic standpoint and from the ability for us to stabilize these in the near future. And so this is sort of the definition. The idea of a middle place is something in between sort of declining and investing. I prefer Alan Malik's definition, which goes more deeply. But if you look at the end there, it's where improvement remains a realistic strategy. And I just want to sort of make sure I underline that at the beginning. There are too many places in Cleveland and there are too many places in Northeast Ohio that people can choose between. For us, not as a city and as a community development field, to also be choosing places where we strategize how to make them stable and great and then sustaining. This is not a matter of choosing winners and losers, but rather looking at the gradient of all of the places and saying, where do we start? And I think as we move forward in this, you'll understand why so much effort has been placed on that. Another way to define these, they're not in the middle necessarily of everything. And so I like to use the term gap. We see it economically speaking all the time, gaps in our financing of projects, but we also see it socially. So there's gaps in perception, right? People think that neighborhoods in Cleveland are unsafe, or they've just never heard of neighborhoods beyond the marquee names on the near west side. And those gaps in perceptions truly affect who's buying homes and how many people are looking in these areas. So home values decline. As community engagement at times has a decline, as home ownership turns to rental changes, or the engagement strategies of the CDC aren't focused in areas, you end up with fewer long-term residents really taking ownership of their streets and their communities. And so we do see dips in block club attendance, dips in community development, board qualities. And so that's another gap, a deficiency in these areas. And then of course, the number one thing we're talking about in Cleveland right now with ARPA funds is how public investment leads to private investment in these places and what our public investment dollars can accomplish. Here's just one very specific example. The people on the call that are in real estate and finance will firmly understand this challenge. The Bel Air Puritas and Lakewood share a border. They're very close, the streets, the grid, they were built around the same time and very similar housing stock. When you look at the home prices, we know Lakewood has greatly appreciated over time. And we understand, this group specifically, that the retail corridors looked wonderful and had a lot of great walkable things 5, 10, and 15 years ago as well. So what has really changed is that perception over time as people have bought into it and as placemaking and walkability has become a higher priority for home buying. That's where Lakewood has started to see more demand, more interest. And as a result, the city is seeing a growth in population and their ability to provide resources. So in these two places, you've got developers, and let's say they both want to put a moderate renovation into the property. In each, they put 55,000 in. Then you go to sell the property, and here's your post-rehab value. You've got a gap in middle neighborhoods of Cleveland. So this would be the same thing happening in Lee Harvard and Collinwood and Old Brooklyn. And then in the places where there's growth happening, you've got profits. And it's such a simple thing, but it really does affect the investment model, not just by private sector developers, but also home buyers. Home buyers do notice when neighborhoods seem to have improvement, momentum, when there are things happening. And what placemaking can perform, and we've seen this in our communities and nationwide, you see this in all the sort of neighborhoods that are trying to see stabilization. You can invest through public dollars on making the place feel like there is that momentum. So these are event strategies, these are beautification strategies, these are subsidizing the quality of the streets and storefronts. They're not necessarily reflective of the true economic recovery, but they are setting the tone for the future. And this is a great example. It's just a simple house, but I like to point to one of them to show you that over the course of just one decade and one homeowner, a property can go from a double that is creating income for the owner, providing a quality, well taken care of home on a street in a middle neighborhood. And then several years later, through some foreclosure problem this particular property had, it is one of those houses that is not terrible, but it certainly is not keeping up with the quality of the street. So when you multiply this by dozens and dozens of properties in small areas, again, it erodes the overall quality and feel. So it's a real high sort of 30,000 foot view of middle places. So what are they in Cleveland is what we needed to really start to focus on. And I won't read a whole slide, but I love to point out that over the 70 years or so, or 60 years or so of this survey, this was a CSU housing survey, about 625,000 properties were built to a 336 person increase. And so this is a very simple concept in the middle neighborhoods work. If supply is outstretching demand, if we're building new places further and further out, you can't help but have decline and filtering occur in your neighborhoods. We know the problem. The question is, how do we stave off that decline and stabilize these places? If you look here, as that pace of overbuilding continued, these middle neighborhoods, which were stable in the 80s and 90s and even 2000s, began to falter. And so this is the untold Cleveland story. We're all familiar with the exodus in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. We're familiar with bankruptcy and white flight and the racist practices of our East and West Side divide. But oftentimes people don't talk about the places that during those decades people called stable. It was like living in a suburb in the city is how people in Lee Harvard referred to it. But today in 2021, that is an old story and an old narrative that we need to realign our perceptions of. I'm actually going to skip these, but I wanted to get to one simple example, which is that when we examine the incomes of neighborhoods in Cleveland, we actually see that in a lot of these stable places, the incomes outpace home values. So you can see on this chart, 52% reflecting the incomes of a household in Cleveland versus its suburbs. So where the income of the average resident in the city of Cleveland or household is about half that of its suburban counterpart, but the home values are at a third. look at Seattle or San Francisco to give you some context, the inverse relationship's occurring. So home values in the city outpace incomes. That's why you see gentrification and displacement conversations there. The real conversation, the real poverty challenge in Cleveland is the disinvestment of the average middle market. As that occurs, the lower income households and the moderate income households that have been in these stable places are now still sitting in the same home, but the neighborhood has declined around them. And we're actually in a partnership with CSU right now, studying the qualities of middle neighborhoods around the country and the ability for public policy that is affecting low income families to provide a better result in a middle neighborhood than in an impoverished part of the same city. So 2 years from now, we should have some great findings on that. So we looked at our regional housing market. I mentioned competition at the beginning. That's really what we're focused on. And the Center for Community Progress has created this economic band at about $100 a square foot, at which point the property values in an area have created stabilization. When you see price points in that range, it typically means that people can purchase homes, and over time through investment, they expect for their dollars to be relatively stable. So again, going back to that Bel Air Puritas Lakewood example, there are places in Cleveland where you buy a home and invest in it, and the market would never show you a profit. And then there are places where if you buy a home and invest in it, you can make several $100,000 on the properties flip. In between those two is everything else. And the question is, where in the market do our neighborhoods lie? And so when you look for that middle, and then you bring out these orange ones are suburbs, when we take those out, we're left with the Cleveland housing market as I understood by this economic range. And it really puts into focus the challenge. This was about a year's worth of work, but really we were able to figure out that Cleveland's middle neighborhoods challenge, unlike other cities, there's middle neighborhoods work in Chicago, Seattle, Baltimore, but Cleveland's challenge is the edge neighborhoods that have already tipped. We really don't have a lot of places that are firmly in the middle as a region, and explains why we see so much disinvestment. So knowing that we have a lot of places in Cleveland that are sort of candidates for this work, where do we start? And the answer is we've got to start in the smallest possible locations so that the investments really do compound and grow. So we can look at council wards or neighborhood boundaries, CDC service areas. They're just enormous. As a guy who worked at a CDC that serviced a 34,000 person neighborhood, I can tell you, it would have been impossible for us to bring resources to bear to move the needle in any one place effectively. And so we want to go, when it comes to data, down to census tracts and block groups. And we came up with this tool that we built with Case Western Reserve University called the Neighborhood Development Index. And what it does is it allows us to look at neighborhoods from a block group level. It lets us look at these places as though the municipal borders aren't there. The index, which I'll talk about, which is what you're seeing in these colors, is a different way of looking at our places as well. Instead of just looking at concentration of demolitions or housing values or incomes or education attainment, and then looking at a map of those things, we actually can create an index score that brings them all together. And by doing that, we can actually look at an entire region of our Northeast Ohio area and say that places here are similar, even if they transcend certain boundaries. And you can see this here on the east side. Here's Lee Harvard, Maple Heights, Warrensville Heights, and Shaker. And yet the economic index shows that the spanning of these neighborhood boundaries for this D typology is true in Lee Harvard, similar to Lomond, Shaker, similar to Warrensville Heights. I can certainly go more deeply into this, and we will, but you get the sense that we're trying to look at our city differently, which can help when we're talking with developers or investors, or simply when we're trying to understand what our places are like. Here is a neighborhood we'll focus on a little later, but this is the Old Brooklyn community on the south side of Cleveland. And as you can see, there are a lot of market typologies in one neighborhood. And so if you were to say middle neighborhoods are Old Brooklyn and Collinwood, you'd be painting with a very large brush. So the actual tool looks like this. We put 178 different indicators into the algorithm. And what it does is it tells us which of these things are most descriptive of certain places. So for example, if you think of Cleveland Heights and Strongsville, you might think of them as very different places, geographically, socioeconomically, but there are going to be streets in Strongsville that are in census tracts that are approximate to certain commercial corridors that fundamentally feel the same as Cleveland Heights. And so by being able to see our region from that kind of lens of what places are similar is just a much more thoughtful way of understanding which places in Cleveland are the most similar to places that are successful outside of Cleveland. And so these four principal components, value indicators, that's pricing, structural indicators, that's bedrooms and bathrooms and age of home, distress indicators like foreclosures, and neighborhood indicators, which are a really big basket of things that make a place feel good, right? It's the ability to have a commercial corridor within your census tract is really critical in order to provide walkability.
It was just timeline.
So here is our typology map countywide and the city of Cleveland in the white border. And what this, again, if you kind of take a look or just cursory, you'll start to see how these areas of Cleveland that are in that middle typology in the green, they bleed out into the first suburbs. And that makes all the sense in the world to practitioners on the ground, but it is something that we really don't focus enough on. And going through quickly, I'll share with you our analysis. Stable middle markets, that's that horizontal band. If you look, you can see here, there's a couple of census tracts in West Park and a couple in Old Brooklyn, but by and large, these areas, which are marked by high home ownership rates, low foreclosure, low housing choice voucher, and relatively strong sales data, these areas tend to be outside of the city of Cleveland. Here you go when you can just look at the city. Moving to that next tier, again, that bar chart where we showed it was sort of just below there, we see the declining middle markets. And this really is the story of the markets of Cleveland. The vast majority of them are in the four middle neighborhoods we've begun focusing on: Bel Air, Puritas, Jefferson, Old Brooklyn, Lee Harvard, and Collinwood, and Euclid Green Collinwood. And as you can see, the home values have come down in this area. We do have still very strong owner occupancy, still pretty old housing stock, not a lot of new construction going on in these places. And then the third of the three categories is the weakest middle markets. Again, in Old Brooklyn and Bel Air Puritas, Collinwood, Lee Harvard, that's really where they keep coming up. And you can see prices are still relatively strong. When you get to the distress level, we're seeing $30 or lower a square foot in some of these places at the block group level. And so this was phase one. We needed to be able to answer the question of where are the middle places in Cleveland. And by doing it like this, we were not only able to say which neighborhoods on a very top level, but we were able to say, now let's focus on how we find very small, almost commercial corridor nodes. The last thing on this map will show is the middle markets. As you can see, this is the story of the middle neighborhoods of Northeast Ohio. It really is that migration pattern. Families that approach the middle class, develop the wealth needed to buy a first home or to buy a bigger home. They simply want to be near their same community assets, and yet they do move somewhat linearly out. And so that proves our truth that places really do matter. People like to stay within a gravity of place. But until Cleveland can provide the quality, stable place that is in competition with its first suburbs, it simply will not be the more attractive option, and we won't see that decline changing. We then wanted to find the streets we go for. So we modeled a lot of this off of a Baltimore nonprofit called the Healthy Neighborhoods Incorporated Group. And HNI really focused on products that were focused on street by street investments. They went much further down, and they said, we're going to pick streets and intersections. Again, because when you can concentrate investment is how you can move the needle in low resource cities like a Cleveland or Baltimore. So doing a street by street analysis on the west side, you can see $350,000 transactions and above. This is 2014 to 2020 data, layering in, again, in the purple, very high-end transactions. The green, the 150 to 200, really shows stable middle. And you can see West Park showing up, West Boulevard, and of course, the near west side. These orange transactions are where you start to see properties declining, if this is where you're seeing less investment by homeowners, and really starts to give us a sense of our middle. And then, of course, there's mortgage activity and transaction activity all throughout the east and west side of Cleveland. They're just not necessarily at those levels, and these black dots represent that. Using the typology we just had and layering it, it gives us a sense of where we wanted to focus. And then we can really get an idea of the street by street places we want to work in. Same thing can be done on the east side. You can see fewer of those $200,000 and above. We have several in Circle North and near the Cleveland Clinic and the Shaker border. In the green category, a handful more in places like Slavic Village and again, Fairfax near the clinic. And then when we get to these orange categories is where North Collinwood and Lee Harvard really start to show up, as well as parts of Mount Pleasant near Shaker Square. And examining that same level of data, we can see where the focus needs to be. This is really important because when you look at Collinwood, you might think, well, you could do Waterloo, or you could do East 185th, or maybe you work on the Euclid Green boundary between South Euclid and Collinwood. There's a lot of choices, and none of them is necessarily wrong, but we've got to figure out a way to start. And so, calling it the next great places, any slide I put here is going to raise questions of how, choosing place. And again, if we don't start in certain places first, then we can't ever get to the momentum of growing communities. And so we need to expand that roster of places that people of choice are looking to buy a home in Cleveland. So one of the 4 neighborhoods is Old Brooklyn. And when we look using our tool, we get a sense of what the enormous 6 square mile neighborhood really has within it. And then we can go again house by house and get a sense of the actual streets. And when we layer these on top and then we start actually walking the streets, which was the last validation component, we can start to get a sense of where we might want to focus. Our focus area came toward that center east part where we saw a transition occurring. And walking the streets, you would see places like these maroon areas were developed in the 90s into cul-de-sacs. So they kind of stood on their own and weren't an attractive place to necessarily be producing a municipal program. These green areas really represented that stable or near stable middle market. And then these yellow areas were showing us where we really started to see the decline taking root. And so by bringing all of that together with the CDC, we were able to identify this very small triangle, it's about 900 properties, as a focal point in this neighborhood. And we did this analysis in all 4 of the places. And so the things that we're looking for when we're in this area are commercial viability, right? Placemaking is the first step toward getting long-term rooted businesses on these corridors. Asset mapping, trying to understand what things are being utilized or underutilized in the community. And then we actually have used this analysis internally for everything from land bank to canopy for understanding where trees should be planted. The data tool can be used for anything. But when it comes to figuring out where we want to invest, it really has been helpful in identifying these nodes. And so take a look with me at this corridor. This is Broadview Road between Spring and Schaff. And if you look, it really does have a nice cohesive stretch to it. There are some really great intersections. It looks recently paved and has some bike infrastructure on it, even if it's minimal. But as you go up and down and start to take a look at the uses, we do have a lot of vacancies. This property has been vacant for 11 years, according to the CDC. We also have a vacant lot next door to it that a young individual in the neighborhood just recently bought and is looking to do a flea market type activity, which is a perfect example of where the CDC can engage and kind of create those very early sparks. Here's another look moving off of Broadview facing east. What I like to focus here on is the residential continuity. You've got housing directly adjacent to a commercial corridor. So in the recipe of things we can use to compete with our first suburb neighbors and other places all over Northeast Ohio, what we hear from people time and time again is that walkability component, that neighborhood feel. And even if it isn't walkability to the same types of stores, that neighborhood component of things being close by and there being things that make living in a space feel like there's a real place to it. You need the infrastructure. So we needed to make sure the infrastructure was there. This is that residential street zoomed in a little bit, and you can see very well kept homes, very nice. The area is really where we are seeing this transition occur. Here's another sort of intersection, and you can just start to understand where if placemaking were brought to this area, and I'm using that term, it's a very broad term. I'm using it in the idea of beautification and sort of wayfinding and things that kind of give you a sense of where you are, mixed with activation opportunities. is really, really can only work so well in certain places. So this is an example of a place we know it can be effective. Here's an asset just adjacent to the corridor. The corridor is on the left side of your screen. This is a 2.5 acre community garden and a CMSD property. And while the CDC has done some really wonderful events here, it's a great example that we can use as we replicate this work elsewhere to say, if you're already putting on community events, if you already are doing things out, trying to get people connecting, there might be dividends to placing them in areas that are like this. And then something that really stands out here and in the Collinwood neighborhood for similarity, the commercial corridors, they don't light a candle to the residential opportunities. You can see the residences here on the east side of the street are some of the most beautiful homes in our region. They're up there with Glenville and with Edgewater for some of these big, beautiful old homes. And yet the commercial corridor, as everyone tells their realtor, is what everyone sees. We know this, it's sort of the gateway to the community. And that's why it's so important to focus in these areas. So when we're examining to make sure that this is where we want to focus the mayor's Middle Neighborhoods program in a neighborhood, we want to make sure we're achieving 3 goals. We want to have the commercial corridor, we want to have some stability and strength, and we want to have the ability to make it a stable but affordable place in the long run. So as we improve value, sorry, question? I'll keep going. So as we improve values, we need to make sure there's housing stock that is prepared for low workforce, moderate income households to stay. And in places where you have a lot of housing, it becomes a much more of an opportunity, rich environment to create mixed income solutions. Actually, I'll go back real quick. Here is our E typology, which was sort of a distressed middle. And you can see the home ownership has declined quite a bit over the last several years. Sale prices are low. Something we track really closely is the bulk buying purchases. Over those 2 years, 68% of transactions have been to bulk buying groups that are turning them into sort of forever cash flows for REITs. That is the most insidious thing we're seeing in these neighborhoods of change. So we know this blue area really needs stabilizing activities. We've already walked down the commercial corridor, but you can see, even with the built environment as attractive as it is, retail use is negligible. There is quite a bit of stock of opportunity, and yet the pipeline to create entrepreneurs and to create investments isn't there. And then on the eastern side, you can see that very sort of stable to upper middle market. But even with the picture I showed and the quality of the housing stock, we're hitting gaps in valuation because of the perception, because the demand for these areas isn't high enough because of things like the commercial corridor to really attract investment. And so we've done this work across the city of Cleveland in all 4 neighborhoods. We have target zones as well as the broader neighborhoods. And what we're doing now is figuring out all of the different resources we can kind of pair pieces of it off and work in middle neighborhoods. So one example is the model block program, which we're bringing back in the city. We're going to be performing model blocks in several communities, 2 of which will be middle neighborhoods. This allows us to sort of prove out the concept that investing in these places works more quickly, more readily, and can really sort of support the neighborhood's development. Also, if you look at the statistics of these areas, this really underscores the narrative of Cleveland's middle, which is that the middle neighborhoods in Cleveland are not middle class, strong places, but really they're on that edge. They have been changing already for several decades. Generationally, they're not as strong as they were in the prior. And as that change occurs, we know the direction it goes. So if we don't want Cleveland to be a city of only haves and have-nots, we need to have the conversation that it's haves, have-nots, and places that are declining very quickly. That third category, that sort of middle, is really what we're focused on. So I will pause there. I've got my 4 slides for the 4, but if there are questions, I'd rather give some time at the end than talk a little more about these places.
Jason, thank you for the presentation. Are there questions from the group?
So this is Dorothy. All I have to say is wow. But there was a lot in there, just a lot in there. So I feel, am I echoing? We good?
No, you're
Yes,
still
you are,
echoing,
Barbara.
Dorothy. Somebody must they don't have their mute on.
Okay, let's see. Oh, that's better. Okay, good. So as you may know, we're working very deeply in these same neighborhoods across the city. We've got 6 that are a little bit different, but these are adjacent to some of those. And I know this city pretty well. I grew up in it, over in that Lee Harvard Union Miles area. But I was just blown away by all this. So it takes a minute to grasp all this, but it's very exciting as well. So I guess my question is, how does a group like this help support this middle market neighborhood initiative when, there's 34 neighborhoods to choose from? So I love the focusing concept here. And then, Jason, I want you to give that. Do you know Malcolm Trier, who just graduated from Cleveland State? Our GIS, he's our GIS guy that's designing all the internet locations where we're going into. But you and he need to talk, because the combination of what he's got for us and what you have here could be really powerful.
Well, I appreciate that, Dorothy, and absolutely anyone on this call who would like a more in-depth conversation. It's what I do, because it really is a lot of door knocking and making sure that this concept gets understood and questions come in. So by all means, yes. And one thing I did want to say is the toolkit, and I have several slides around this, but the toolkits, the interventions, they aren't new. I'm sitting on a group right now discussing how we're going to leverage ARPA funds. And it's incredible group. It's one of the best groups I've ever been involved in Northeast Ohio work. And we are going to make some really great recommendations. But at the end of the day, it's just financing the tools, the same tools we've used in community development since really when we were starting this work in the 70s. And so whether it's bringing broadband access, whether it's doing construction gap for single family homes, whether it's putting banners up and activities in the summer, we already know how to do it. The reason my focus right now has been so much on getting to that scalpel approach is because with $2 or $3 million, I know that there are projects ready to go in some of these places that we can move the needle in a way that these neighborhoods haven't seen since they were first developed. And yet that same amount of resources wouldn't make a dent in some of the other communities all over our Northeast Ohio region, not just in the city. And so we needed to be able to find those places. So whether it's the West 130s and Lorraine, or whether it's Lee Harvard and just the northern components there against Lomond and Scottsdale Ave, we know now where to go. The question is, how many partners can we get to agree that we're all going to agree on the focus areas and really focus on our resources when possible, without forgetting about our uses in other places. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my former director and CEO of Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, Tanya Maness, always spoke of this spectrum of lending. We know where the private sector works. We know where public investment is the only thing that will work. These are the places where that hybrid is still possible, and Cleveland needs to use it more than ever.
Yeah, and if I think about, so I know the technology language, and I'm just learning community development language. So thanks for letting me sit in on this. But if you combine that technology with the community development plus this empowerment package, so once you connect people, you have to walk them across the digital divide, do the adoption piece, but then lead them to empowerment. And then it's about the interventions and what, our interventions are designed to improve health, education, and economic opportunity. But you have to do that within a place, right? And so I want to be sure that these concepts come together in a way, and I'll stop talking. So this just is exciting to me.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Jason. And Monique, I see that you have your hand up. And you're still on mute if you're speaking.
Yeah, it's just take me a minute to get to my mouse. So my question is more of a general question around So I understand that this is and it's really just for my understanding. So I understand that this is approach for middle neighborhoods. I guess my question is around if there's middle, when I think of Cleveland, I think about there being middle areas within neighborhoods, right? And pockets. And so I'm curious about how we're talking about those, or if there's could be a strategy for the areas within. So I'm just trying to understand big picture, right? Middle neighborhoods versus middle areas within neighborhoods, and how we're thinking about it and where there's opportunity for those spaces as well.
Yeah, great. It's a great question, and that's really why we started with the mapping tool being this block group oriented tool. And so, if you look on the screen here, all of these green areas of varying saturation, I suppose, are places that have fallen into the three typologies that are in sort of the middle or edge. And what that gives us an opportunity then is to look within them for the places that we want to be working. So, Glenville, Slavic Village, Bel Air Pier, the places are enormous. And when you ask people about their community, where they live, many will refer to the political boundary of their neighborhood as we record it, downtown. But a lot of people think of their neighborhood as just the 5-minute walk around the block they take every day with their dog, or wherever the closest grocery is. And so when we're talking about middle neighborhoods, and I said this before, I'll continue to say it, I really don't like the term middle, and I really don't like the term neighborhood. It really is about sort of these strategic little sub-communities that we just know, and this is my CDC background, but it's strange sometimes why one block looks better than another block. Can be as simple as there's more seniors who are still around taking care of their homes on that street, and in the other one there's been more transition in just the last 5 years. But we know that's the case, and rather than sort of pushing against that with these big data points of what the neighborhood of St. Clair Superior is or isn't, we just wanted to be able to get down to the street. So if you're not in a quote unquote middle neighborhood, but you are an area that the data shows that this is a strong, stable area. I think Larchmere is probably one of the best examples of the whole. It does not show up in a block group as similar to the places like Lee Harvard and Euclid Green. But we all know Larchmere is a phenomenal corridor, and the housing stock there has become or has remained relatively stable compared to a lot of other places. There's also some new development happening. The data doesn't show us that, and I'll be the first to admit that these tools are only as good as the people reading them. But this is a really great kicking off point. But the toolkit's the same, whether you're working in Glenville or you're working in Detroit Shoreway. We only have the same tools. It's our jobs, whether it's middle neighborhoods or practitioners, to focus as much as possible. And I'll end with this really important piece, because the private sector is not going to do it. The private sector is not going to go further steps when they're looking at rent rates, when they're looking at cash flowing a project, than to simply understand the market as they see it. And at the CDCs, we're often banging on the table showing underutilized value, that there's more here than you see in the numbers. But at the end of the day, we understand it's economics and finance, and we need as a city to sell our story better. And if we're going to put public dollars to do that, step one is making sure those public dollars are used in the most leverageable and the best possible way. So 3-4 years from now, my goal is we're moving on to the next group and the next group, and we're truly stabilizing large areas of the city of Cleveland for the next generation of residents and home buyers.
And that leads to my follow-up question. Thank you so much. Just real quick to follow up. So does the strategy become a both and for these middle neighborhood or middle area, middle communities? I know you don't like any of the terminology, or because we have had a lot of focus on low income. So is it a both and, or is it starting to move towards focusing on these areas you're describing?
Yes, so it is a both and if I go to the last couple of slides, I can show you, the toolkit, as I was starting to allude to. There aren't even a lot of tools really in the city of Cleveland or in the county that are for middle class. Once you've approached incomes above low income and distressed income, the toolkit goes out. So while we can use them in census tracts that have a mix, we have $20 million a year coming in from HUD, and that money is prioritized for low income and distressed areas. And that's where it should go. And that's what we want those resources to go to. But when we're looking at the tools, we can create things like this that are market driven for stabilization for people of means that can buy. But then we also want to layer over the service components of HUD funding can allow us to do. So for example, senior housing support, fixed incomes, low incomes. The Mayor's Neighborhood Transformation Initiative was about bringing those seniors an opportunity to have their homes updated, fixed, quality of life as you age in place. We want to do that same work in these places where we're doing the storefront renovations and the gap constructions, and Mark Joseph really is sort of the king of all this kind of research, but we're following in his footsteps. These middle places really can provide, we believe, opportunities for low income, workforce income, and middle income, all in the same place. I'll point out there are tens of thousands of homes in these 4 neighborhoods. So we would have to have a lot of investment before you'd be concerned about displacement or change. What we really want is to stabilize places so low income households can stay in their homes, but have the neighborhoods be quality around them. So it is a both and approach.
Thank you.
And Jason, Tom has his hand up, so if we can do one more quick question and then wrap up with you, and because we do have Drew who's also giving a presentation today. So Tom, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Teresa. And maybe this is something we can talk offline, Jason, but it was a really great presentation. I really very much appreciate the inclusion of the commercial districts as a part of the strategy, because sometimes I feel like we don't put the two together and we silo them, and they're really inextricably combined and need to be thought of in the same thought. And so with your tools that you had on the previous slide, they're all the tools we kind of know, and they're all about beautification and stabilizing. And I'm curious, in your research and in your networking with other cities, if you've seen where people have cracked the code to helping with market demand and filling those beautiful buildings with businesses, because that's kind of like that last piece, that like you can fill a house with a beautiful home, but how do you get more businesses to do that, and leveraging some of that stuff?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And so in terms of cracking the code, I'm very straightforward about this and upfront. That there isn't a Hail Mary out there that changes the dynamics.
Sure.
But the best we have is this idea of this mapping strategy I've shown you. So for example, this corridor we just walked down is 44 storefronts, of which about a third are actively being used. And so what we already know is that we have space that is prepared, that is applicable. And we also know that in this case, this is the Old Brooklyn CDC. They're talking with entrepreneurs and creating that pipeline at all times. If you've worked in CDCs in this audience, you know that you're lucky if you can get one solid business attracted and in a place in a year. It's a very difficult process. But if we know that we can do 1 or 2 a year, that we can bring these in and really guide them through tools like ECDI loans or City of Cleveland projects, and then we make sure that they're ending up in a cohesive corridor, now we're really cooking, because now that 1 or 2 steps is in the same place. The 4 or 5 senior homes that have new front porches are against the street nearby. The 18 trees that the county planted were planted right there. And so when you do those layering effects, you create that momentum. And step 0, before you get the entrepreneur or the trees, is placemaking. And so if it's popping up events, if it's getting access to storefronts through option contracts and walking people through on Friday nights, whether it's going to your local community that have these people that work in cottage industries at home and getting them to put up tents and have little fairs, getting people to see that the momentum is there. We know neighborhoods are sold by the neighbors, not by Howard Hanna. No offense to Howard Hanna, they do a great job, but it's the people that live there that have to love their place. And if Cleveland's original sin is hating itself and saying it's not a great place, then our neighborhoods need to learn from that and do the same thing. So highly targeted, work with what you have, layer it, and create that momentum where we know the low-hanging fruit will be possible. If these places can't succeed, Cleveland doesn't have neighborhoods that can, because these have some of the most robust assets at the time.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jason. I'm with Dorothy. This was a wow presentation, a lot of information, and the comments are coming through in the chat. So thank you for your time. And I'm thinking maybe you come back and visit this committee in a year just to talk about where you are and the success. And Dorothy, at some point, maybe we'll have Digital C also talk about the success of the connectivity of the residents in the neighborhoods as well. So Jason, again, thank you for your time and a great presentation. And Linda, thank you for arranging this. And Drew, if you are ready to speak on forgotten open spaces, Rockefeller Park and Kingsbury Run, we will turn it over to you.
I am, and I'm going to try to maybe fast forward through this presentation a little bit so that we get through it all in respect for people's time and hopefully field some questions. So the title of the presentation is Forgotten Open Spaces, Rockefeller Park and Kingsbury Run, and this is kind of a kind of benchmark for two of the projects that have been centered in my fellowship experience thus far in the last couple of months. The first off is Rockefeller Park. And, you know, most people may counteract my statement of saying that it is a forgotten space, but I'll share some reasons why I think it is. So Rockefeller Park is largely one of the largest green spaces within Cleveland, and the kind of inquiry around the park starts with this one node formerly called Sawinski Playground, and it's in that circled area right there. And if we zoom in a little bit, directly adjacent to the Cultural Gardens and not that far from Gordon Park. And Sawinski Park was formerly designed by the Landscape Architecture Department in Cleveland and used to look like this. Used to have a softball field, playgrounds, and sledding hill, and a bunch of amenities that the community enjoyed. But at the center of both Sawinski Playground, but then also the Cultural Garden, is kind of this clash over race relations within Rockefeller Park. And one specific incident at Sawinski called, famously noted as Sawinski 6, that has bearing resemblance to the Central Park 5, where 6 young boys were accused of rape and attacking of a young couple. And some of these similarities, if you're familiar with the Central Park 5 case, all young teenagers, intensified by the local and national news media, call and post, there were coerced confessions without the presence of lawyers and parents. The stories of the teens never aligned. Some of them weren't even there, 3 of them acquitted, although 3 others were convicted. And they publicized the names of the defendants, which was against the laws because they were all minors. And that's to say that this framed this kind of conversation around public space at the time within the 1960s, that public space, including Rockefeller Park, was unsafe if a certain demographic was using it. And you can see this kind of newspaper clip from both instances, Central Park 5 on the right and so the Sawinski 6 on the left. And this photograph is taken from the specific crime scene where allegedly the young boy who was attacked crawled up these stairways, this stairway that used to lead to the park, but now no longer leads to anywhere. So along with CNP has been working with UCI, Famicos Foundation, TPL, and some folks at the city in regards to some reimagining and kind of storytelling around these spaces within Rockefeller Park. And the question is really, how do we heal from some of these events? And you'll see this kind of theme continue. And then the first part is kind of understanding that, you know, what is synonymous with Rockefeller Park is the Cultural Gardens, but unfortunately, while these areas are quite beautiful, and if you go there on any given Saturday, you can see someone taking their wedding photos and things like that, the Cultural Gardens represent less than 30% of the actual park. There's a vast majority of the park that is incredibly underutilized and forgotten. And it is the understanding that Rockefeller Park is not the Cultural Gardens, but that the Cultural Gardens are in Rockefeller Park. And looking at Sawinski itself, we started to imagine again, what can this kind of new imagining of the park feel like? So this is kind of one of the examples or themes that we pulled, calling Rockefeller, basically bringing back that element of playgrounds and activity back into the park. And starting to brainstorm again in terms of program and articulation of space, what this can look like. And, fielding a lot of our inspiration directly from community engagement with the neighbors adjacent, but specifically with children, and I'll kind of talk about that in a second. TPL in coordination with Reese's Clee has come out with this Rockefeller Field Guide, and we recently had an engagement, I believe it was last Friday, at the Wilson Elementary School directly adjacent to Sawinski Park. If you know any children that would like to fill out this guide and live in the either Glenville, St. Clair Superior, or Huff neighborhood, please let me know. I can get you this available for printout. And we had an activation, like I mentioned last Friday, where we brought kids out to Sawinski. They played tug of war, capture the flag within the park, and spurring the imagination of the kids while they're at play, but then taking them back inside to create and let us know what they would like in the park, whether it's gardens. Some people call for splash park and things like that. And my background has led me to some pursuits in virtual reality, so also taking the kids in virtual reality to have them design in space within the park as well. Another area a bit south of Sawinski is one area that we're calling the Donside Trail, which is also part of our community engagement efforts. Is linking Sawinski, as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, all the way down to Superior. And we believe that this place is ripe for investment in regards to multimodal transportation. So a multi-use trail that can get bike and pet infrastructure off of MLK, where it's a little bit safer, but then also in kind of this respite of nature that has been kind of left to its own devices. So this is kind of a section quickly illustrating what we believe that can go through there. And again, some of these spaces, most people have no idea exist, because the actual orientation that most people have to Rockefeller Park is directly off MLK, and not understanding that there's almost 60 to 100 feet from MLK to either Ansel or East Boulevard on either sides that can be used. So again, one of the things we want to do is get multimodal transportation. So of course, bike access, but then also places for people to walk and sit in these areas. And then also some amenities that we've heard from the community at specific trailheads or entrances within the park. And we've been doing this through community engagement called Hike Shop. So we've done 2 of these already. Our last one was July 3rd. And hopefully maybe some of you can join us on August 7th. And basically what we've done is chart out 1 to 2 mile hike loops in kind of these forgotten pathways in Rockefeller Park. We've gone out there and kind of cleared it ourselves either 2 or 3 days prior, and hung up little flags. And generally I give an overview based on the history with some printed materials, and we walk through some of these areas that, again, people have no idea exist, even though they live directly adjacent to the park. So we hope you can join us August 7th. In our last hike for the series. There could be potential hikes in the future in September and October. Kingsbury Run, and I'll start again with a little bit of historical context. This is again a rendering or an image from 1858 of the Cuyahoga Valley, generally kind of under industrialized, unlike its present state. But we know that the Industrial Revolution happened, and many of the adjacent areas adjacent to the Cuyahoga were used for industry. And this is a image from the Garden Valley housing projects that are directly adjacent to the Kingsbury Run site. And at that time, many of the residents were subject to some of the direct outliers of some of that industrial expansion. Some of these housing, this housing complex was famously noted for having some of the worst housing conditions, not only in the city of Cleveland, but also in the United States. And then, similar to Rockefeller Park, some of you might be familiar with the story, this level of race relations and kind of combativeness within the neighborhood that led to the Sideway Bridge burning, which is a focal point of some of the interventions that CNP, along with the staff at BBC, has been looking into in regards to kind of reinventing and getting people excited about the site. We've partnered with a studio class, or 2 studio classes rather, at Cornell University, that have looked into analysis and designs within the site. They've just finished up in May. So they're preparing a report on a number of things, from relationships to the opportunity corridor to specific stakeholders. Some of them might be on the call, whether it was folks from Western Lands Conservancy, Cleveland Foundation, and so forth, balancing kind of this input. And what we'll be taking is some of the visions that the students created, again, some specifically around the Sideway Bridge, and it's kind of reinvigoration, and then doing some community engagement similar to the hike shops that we're doing in Rockefeller Park. The first one will be in the last week of June or week of July, July 29th. If you're interested, I can get back to you on specific times if you want to join us. We've also have some efforts working with prospectus architecture within the city, doing historical designation for the site. So we've cleared our first round of historic designation process, and I don't want to count the chickens before it hatches, but it's my thinking that the Sideway Bridge will be a nationally historically designated landmark within a year, if I said the words correctly. So they've done the first part of their due diligence, which is kind of the engineering inspection. So a team of both the architects and engineer have gone out to site, kind of taken written observations and measurements of the level of corrosion and neglect that the bridge has experienced over time. We've also uncovered various drawings of the historic design of the bridge. The bridge was actually designed by, I think his name is Henry Robley. He's also the designer of the Brooklyn Bridge. And based on this research, we now know that the Sideway Bridge has some proprietary technology in regards to suspension bridges that were pretty innovative at the time, which again is going to help us with that historic designation. And lastly, the Sideway Bridge is also a part of an initiative brought by the Sculpture Center called Crossroads, where they have 13 artists in 6 different neighborhoods. The exhibition is actually opening up this Friday, so I encourage you all to go see it. And the artist that is in this neighborhood in particular and working with the Sideway Bridge, her name is Shani Richards. She's created a large model of the bridge, and the exhibit is working with the artists in their own medium. She's a sculptural artist. Some of the other artists are visual artists, whether they're painters, photographers, and adding a layer of virtual reality or immersiveness to it. So I didn't get the final version of this, but she was able to give me a little preview of like halfway through the process. So generally her thought process in her art was to create this this 3D model in space. And with your phone, you'll be able to kind of simulate the Sideway Bridge burning. So I definitely encourage you all to go out to the Sculpture Center and see not only her work, but also the other artists and learn about the ongoing activities around the bridge and the Kingsbury Run site. And lastly, I'll say for both these, the reason why both these sites are important and kind of the focus of my work is kind of the acknowledgement of some of these historic events that have led to disinvestment in certain areas within the city, and understanding that acknowledgement is needed for reconciliation and moving forward. And hopefully I didn't run through that too fast. There's much more in both those presentations, but for time's sake, I tried to sum it all up in one. And feel free to ask any questions if we have time.
So Andrew, I have to say, wow, I'm born and raised in Cleveland and did not know the history. So thank you for sharing. And we have time for questions from the group, but that's just amazing what you're doing. Curious as to how is this being funded?
Generally, there are no large funding sources right now because of the nature of my fellowship being kind of subsidized by the Enterprise Foundation. I'm just working on all of it, which kind of, it's a level of flexibility allows me to work with the CDC. So we have, at least in the Rockefeller Park project, we have bi-weekly meetings with the different organizations. Recess CLE has, kind of just spotted us. I mean, in that last community engagement event, they kind of just came out and did their thing. So we've been fortunate enough to have people that are really just in tune with the work that we're doing and kind of just volunteering their time. But if you know some funding sources, and I see Jennifer Coleman on the call, if you know some funding sources, we're glad to have some conversations.
Wow, opportunity for a lot of public partnerships there. Any questions from the group? see, there are comments in there, but in the chat, but I just want to open it up because we do have 5 more minutes. If anyone wants to shout out their comments or questions or statements.
Well, I did put in the chat that we'll circulate the hike shop info about August 7th and then the end of the month for Kingsbury Run. And we'll also add about the Sculpture Center too to everybody. But really what I want to say, and Debbie has been on this, I see her chat coming in. Debbie and Chris have been on the walk, but it is amazing to see. And I've seen some comments about, yeah, I used to go there as a kid and then was told to stay away. I have the same story. And it is just amazing to see when you walk through what an amazing piece of nature this is. And we treat it like it's a path along Martin Luther King and some greenery on either side. And oh, maybe you'll go to a cultural garden. But to choose slide, less than 50% of the Rockefeller Park land is part of the cultural garden. So there's 50% plus available for uses. So I think it's really an amazing initiative, and we feel very fortunate at Neighborhood Progress both to have secured Drew as our Rose Fellow, but also to have aligned right when Chris said to me, Linda, is there any way you guys could help us with these parks that have been, she was talking about Sawinski, there's 3 others yet. I said, we happen to be having a fellow starting October 9th. So it was an amazing confluence of good things happening. And I just, again, can't encourage you enough to go on these hikes because they're a chance to see a part of Cleveland that is forgotten and amazing.
Come on the hike. It's amazing.
You want to hike?
No, I mean, I've done it 25 times at this point, but I just highly encourage everyone. Our favorite comments are, oh, this is a real hike, and oh, this is the woods. A lot of folks don't, as Linda said, like folks don't view it as nature, but it truly is. And it's an incredible experience. And just on a side note, because this is the placemaking committee from the perspective of placekeeping, because this is an existing place, but then more specifically to the real estate values, and connecting both Jason's presentation to Drew's, it's really important that we make some significant investment into Rockefeller Park, particularly if we're looking to bring up the property values in the Glenville and Huff communities. And so investing in the park leads to direct property value increase for these homeowners who in some cases have lived in these communities for 40 years. So just wanted to throw that out there.
And I'll just add really quickly, it's amazing when you go on this hike. I agree with Chris and Linda. Go on the hike. You see old concrete pavement from walks that used to be there, paths. You see old lights poles that are buried in the woods. And then you see these stairs that connected up to the neighborhood that people use that, you know, are all overgrown or in some cases missing stairs or broken concrete or stone. I think Rockefeller Park is still being kept up very well by the city, but these connections and these opportunities to really further enhance it and provide neighborhood amenities, there's a lot of them there. And I think some of them are actually low-hanging fruit that we can really work together to try to make the connections now. So again, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Linda, and thank you, Drew, for all your amazing work. This has really been phenomenal.
Agree. Thank you, everyone. And I see Dorothy put in, she wants to take her team on a tour, on a hike. So
I want them to join that August 7th group. I mean, the group that works in Huff and Glenville, and Drew, this connects. You've got to meet Richard at the Tech Hive and Angela and Kat Smiley. That whole group can give energy behind, help with some energy behind what you're doing. Not that you need energy. I mean, you've got plenty and that was amazing, but I think we can help to bring that to life a little bit with all of what we're doing in the neighborhoods as well.
I was going to say, come August 7th, but then also let's do a separate hike because we've done these in phases. It's not the same hike every time. And I think there might be another hike that we've already done that I think is more adjacent to your neighborhood.
That's great. Let me let me connect you with that team, because you just need to guide them and intersect the program here.
I know
So
we're at
Linda said-
2:30, Teresa, but I wanted to just add one other point of like serendipity, which is, you know, both arrival of some ARPA funds and then the potential for some infrastructure funds. And so it just, the timing of all of this just feels like really this amazing serendipitous blessing from the universe. So I just think it's kind of cool how it's all coming together. And then we have these wonderful interns as well, working and helping with this. So it's just a great time. Thank you, everybody.
So great. And Linda, I want to please make sure you send out the information by email to everyone. And those who, we did record this meeting for those who weren't able to attend, for those who left early. And if you just want to go back and listen to some of the things we've learned today from both of our presenters, we're going to share the recording. So everyone, thank you for your time. This has been a very engaging meeting. Drew and Jason, thank you for the presentations. And our next meeting is Tuesday, October 12th at 1 o'clock. So we'll see you then. Thanks, everyone.